What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video, and it is time for me to reveal my 2025-2026 standings predictions for the regular season, and we're just doing it in one full video. It might end up being a pretty long one. I looked at what I did last year. I went division by division. Holy shit, I thought I was hot shit or something like that. We're gonna dive into it. When looking at this, I think I ended up having some spicy takes. I didn't go like completely wild, but there definitely is some boldness in this. I think you can probably pencil in like 11 to 12 playoff teams that 90% of people are probably going to have within their standing predictions. But there's definitely some teams not in the playoffs that I'm way higher on, way lower on. So yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to roll it out like by division, and I'm going to go like 2 to 3 teams to start out, then like either the rest of it or like another 2 to 3, then the final 2 to 3. And without further ado, we are starting with Metro Division, the first 2 teams. The Carolina Hurricanes are in first place. I've talked about this a lot. 7-1 to win the President's Trophy right now. I would absolutely hammer that, considering they've just been so good every year outside of last season when they had so much change in the offseason prior. They're going to be a wagon in the regular season. I see them pretty easily cruising to a Metro Division title, adding Miller, adding Nikishin, adding Ehlers. The goalie tandem is really the only thing that scares me a little bit just because of the health. But besides that, they are going to be one of the most complete regular season teams. They still need a second line center to actually contend for a Stanley Cup. But in the regular season, I trust Rod Brind'Amour. I trust the Carolina Hurricanes. I trust Eric Tulsky. They're going to be great. New Jersey Devils, it really just comes down to health. If I get 70-plus games from Jack Hughes, Dougie Hamilton, Siegenthaler, who have all dealt with injuries the last 2 years, I think that this is a safe playoff team. When looking at it, the tandem is damn good of Markstrom and Allen. Allen really stepped up in a big way last season. The defense core is very well balanced, and hopefully Luke Hughes, now that he's getting $9 million per season, can take yet another step. The forward core depth is a little bit scary, but when you do have a 3-headed monster of Bratt, Hughes, and Heischer, I think it'll be pretty solid. The penalty kill has been good consistently in the regular season. Again, if healthy, should be a safe playoff team. The next 3 teams in the Metro Division, I got the New York Rangers bouncing back in a big way. If you looked at my award predictions, I got Fox winning the Norris, I got Shesterkin winning the Vezina, and I think that they are going to get a new coach bump from Mike Sullivan. When talking about depth with the New Jersey Devils, that's the main problem with the New York Rangers, considering good top 6. After that shit show, Gabe Perreault didn't even make the NHL team. The defense core, guys like Vankanainen, Schneider, and Soucy need to have very solid seasons, but I think the star power will safely get this team back into the playoffs. When looking at it, President's Trophy in 2024, 85-point team last year. I think they're somewhere in the middle. Yes, there is serious age regression, but they also will have a full season of JT Miller this year, so I have them in the playoffs. The Washington Capitals, just a very deep and well-balanced team. I have them right now making the wild card. When looking at them, there's a lot of guys that could regress a decent amount offensively, like Ovechkin, like Protas, PLD, at least offensively. But I still think that top 6, and especially potentially that third line with an injection of Ryan Leonard, could be very solid for them. I'm really high in the defense core. I think it's a top 3 defense core in the NHL. And the goalie tandem, although Lindgren kind of proved last season that the end of the 2024 season was a little bit fugazi, it's still a very solid goalie tandem, and Spencer Carberry has proved himself to be one of the best coaches in the NHL based on its smashing expectations his first 2 years. So I think Washington's definitely going to be in the wild card mix. Columbus, I've talked about it before. The underlying numbers were kind of showing that they were a little bit fugazi last season. And now they do have a lot of potential progression within their roster because they are so young. Guys like Kent Johnson, Adam Fantilli, Denton Mateychuk. But I still think that they're a year away from being that serious playoff threat. And I know that they were kind of a playoff threat last year, but it was just a dog shit Eastern Conference wild card race at the end last season. But yeah, it's really going to come down to the goaltending. Can Jet Greaves give you 40 games of 905? That'd be a big improvement compared to Elvis Merzlikins and Tarasov last season. That is just their clear flaw right now in the defense core outside of Werenski. Doesn't really move me that much unless Mateychuk takes a big step. So yeah, right now I have them at 87 points, but maybe an improvement in their underlying numbers, and then that following offseason, they make some moves to potentially get into the playoffs. And then the bottom 3, no shockers here. My New York Islanders, I think that they're kind of being slept on. I don't think they're going to be like complete ass. I hope that they're complete ass low key. But yeah, they still have one of the best goalies in the NHL. We'll see who the backup ends up being. David Riddick right now slated to be it. The defense core is why they're probably not going to be a playoff team or not be that close to making the playoffs. But the forward core, it's pretty deep. Guys like Shabanov, I think Heineman's really going to surprise some people. And hopefully Matthew Schaefer can at least elevate that defense core to being somewhat competent. But yeah, they're clearly heading towards a retool, rebuild. Hopefully they end up trading Peugeot and maybe even Anders Lee next season. There's not a lot of sellers heading into this year, so the Islanders might really fit that mold. And I think their final month or two, they might be one of the worst teams in the entire NHL as they look ahead to a Gavin McKenna. The Flyers in 7th. Rick Tocchet's first season doesn't have a ton to work with outside of Michkov and Konechny. I do like their wingers. The centers are a little bit lackluster, and the defense core, there's a lot of average to above average, but nothing that really moves me. It's really just going to come down to similar to Columbus. The goalie tandem was so bad last year. Will Vladar be a huge improvement? Can Urson bounce back? But I think that they're still like a Columbus, well, more so than a Columbus, like a year, maybe 2 years away from being a serious threat. I like the way that their prospect pool is building with guys like Porter Martone, who was very good in his first college game. And I don't see Danny Briere being that aggressive, and especially after they did lose Scott Lawton at the trade deadline last year. Not saying he's some huge piece, but they're still kind of somewhat deep within their rebuild, and I don't see them taking a huge step at all this year, and their fans probably shouldn't want them to. They need another top 5 pick or something like that. And then the Pittsburgh Penguins, pretty self-explanatory. They might end up selling pretty heavily throughout the season. Guys like Malkin, Crosby, Rust, Raquel, and Carlson. And yeah, you just look at that defense core. Carlson and Letang are their 1-2 right now. That would have been great a decade ago. Pretty bad now. And outside of that, especially after trading Marcus Pettersson last year, it was a very good deal. Don't get me wrong. And they ended up getting like the 11th or 12th overall pick. But yeah, it's not looking good in terms of that defense core. Shilovs, Blomqvist, Murashov, maybe it could be something down the line for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't expect them next season to really be something for Pittsburgh. When looking at it, they were pretty bad last year, but actually finished very strong, going 10-5-2. Kyle Dubas cannot allow that to happen in a Gavin McKenna year. He needs to somewhat start selling, and I think this year is going to be the first kind of official tank year for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Still have a good first line. The power play will be solid, but the rest of the team, he's kind of gutted, and rightfully so. Ryan Graves on waivers today. Moving on to the Atlantic Division, I got Tampa Bay. I think they finally, entering the season for the first time since like 2022, have very strong forward depth. A full season of Bjorkstrand and Gord is going to be really, really big for them in terms of that. Connor Geekie could potentially take a solid step. I don't love the backup goalie still. Vasilevsky's unfortunately going to have to play 60 to 65 games and might run out of steam come playoff time like he has the last couple of years. But this Tampa Bay team is looking very, very solid, and there's more consistency compared to maybe some of the other teams in the Atlantic right now heading into next season. Like the Toronto Maple Leafs, it's going to be an adjustment. Not having Mitch Marner anymore, and it might ding them up a little bit in terms of the regular season, but at this point, all you care about is the playoffs. For the Toronto Maple Leafs, it's Lawton's hurt now, but they have a couple of guys that could bounce back in big ways, like Michelli, like Dakota Joshua. I like the Nick Waugh pickup, as well as once he gets healthy, Scott Lawton was god-awful for them in the regular. He had like 4 points in 20 games, and I don't think that he scored a single point in the playoffs. But they actually have, similar to Tampa Bay, they actually have forward depth for the first time in a long time, and that makes them a serious threat come playoff time. The tandem is going to safely get them into the playoffs. The defense core, although they don't have that number one that you look for in a contender, is very, very well balanced with guys like Tanev, Carlo, McCabe, Morgan Riley. OEL's on the third pair. He's still very effective. They're going to be a safe playoff team. Then we got, what's next? 3 through 8, maybe I just dropped? Yeah, 3 through 8. When looking at the Ottawa Senators, I really like this team, man. I really like this damn team, especially if Dylan Cousins, who had 16 points in his final 21 regular season games, can replicate that, fill that hole at second line center. Bringing in someone like Jordan Spence, I think that this is a very underrated defense core. The top 4 of Sanderson, Shabbat, Nick Jensen hopefully doesn't fall off. He's starting to get up there in age, as well as Artem Zub hopefully can be healthy, as well as the bottom pair being 2 young guys in Tyler Klevin and Jordan Spence that I think could really surprise some people. And also the goalie tandem. They're not going to allow a lot of goals, in my opinion, this season when you also have Linus Olmark and Merrilainen, who had a 925 at the NHL level last season and had a 913 in the AHL. Compare that to Forsberg last year, only had a 901. The forward core is a little bit shallow. They're going to need Stützle and Kachuk to return to like 2023 level production. That's the main concern, I would say, this year. But yeah, I think led by Travis Green behind the bench, I think they're going to be a playoff team. I think they were a 96 or 97 point team last year, so they get a little bit of a bump. The Atlantic's just really, really tough, obviously. The Florida Panthers. Now, I think they're going to make the playoffs even with all their injuries, considering they were able to re-sign all of their guys this summer. That was crucial. They're going to be scrapping for a spot, but I think Bill Zito will do what it takes to make the playoffs, considering Barkov might be back sooner rather than later, considering he told Eric Spoelstra, the Miami Heat's head coach, that it's only going to be 5 to 6 months. That would be nuts, but they're going to find a way into the playoffs, and Zito will use that money accordingly if Barkov can't return. I have no worries, not crazy worries about the Florida Panthers. Montreal Canadiens. This one's going to get me some heat, especially with me putting Noah Dobson as the picture. I think that they're going to be a very fun offensive team. The defense still scares me a lot. At 5-on-5 last year, they were third worst in terms of 5-on-5 expected goals per 60. Dobson and Demidov definitely add a lot of offense. Their defense is not quite there, I could imagine, heading into next season. Montembeault stood on his head last year, and I still think he's going to have a solid season, but I'm not sure he's going to be able to cover up all the warts that this defense did have. They still don't have a second-line center. Again, I think them and San Jose have the brightest future in the NHL. But this season, I do like more well-balanced teams like a Washington Capitals, like a Panthers, even without Alexander Barkov, like an Ottawa Senators. I could be completely wrong. Do not get me wrong. But just for me, last year, I think if you simmed out that season 100 times, 80 of those times, they're like an 82 to 86 point team. So that's where I'm coming from. Them taking a jump compared to the team last year. But last year's team did get to 91 points. If that makes any sense. Again, overperformed last year. This wouldn't be a disaster for them if they don't make the playoffs. Like they're not entering their window fully. They were just ahead of schedule last year. So that's where I personally have them. If Newhook can bounce back, if Line A is better at 5-on-5, they could definitely be a playoff team. Again, I have them missing by 2 points behind the Washington Capitals. But right now I have them just missing a little bit. The Boston Bruins, I've said this 9,000 times. I'm very high on them. Everything went wrong for this team last year. Jeremy Swayman's not going to have an 891. Lindholm and McAvoy are not going to play a combined 67 games. And last year, they were a 76-point team. And they actually weren't even that bad until they sold at the deadline. I think they finished going like 6-17 and 3 in their final third. Like they just sold and then kind of packed it up. I think they're going to be a much better team, although that forward core absolutely stinks. The Buffalo Sabres, yeah, you got UPL hurt now, and even if he's healthy, he's not that good of a goalie. You got Devon Levi, you got Georgiev. Alex Lyon does not instill a ton of confidence. I think the defense core is actually going to be pretty solid. I really like that Mike Kesselring pickup, but also they have a bunch of injuries on the defense core right now. It's not really long-term, but you don't like to see that. And the forward core is a massive question mark outside of Alex Tuch and Tage Thompson. Like, I don't know who I can fully trust. I love Zach Benson. I think he's going to have a big season, but there's just too many question marks for me to really believe in this team, especially when it is the Buffalo Sabres. They are kind of the cursed NHL team, so I don't quite have them. I don't like Lindy Ruff as a coach that much, and even analytically, there's not something that you can really pull and be like, they're going to really build off this. They ranked 27th in terms of 5-on-5 expected goals last year, 25th in all situations. They could have that ceiling. If everybody takes a step, it's definitely possible. I'm just personally not predicting that step for next season, especially in such a tough Atlantic division. If they were in the Pacific division, maybe I could see it. But in the Atlantic division, not happening probably. The Detroit Red Wings, the defense score still stinks. I think John Gibson is going to come back down a little bit down to earth. He was great last year, but I don't quite see that happening again. The penalty kill is still pretty god-awful. They'll score some goals. I like the top 6. The power play was really good last year, ranked 4th. But and I still think they have a bright defenseman future when looking at guys like Axel Sundin Palika and others. But right now, it's really just Edvinsson and Seider, and then a lot of bums for the most part. And I don't foresee them making the playoffs. On to the Central Division. I think I just go 1 through 6 off rip. Yeah. Dallas Stars, pretty safe pick when looking at them. They really don't have any flaws outside of obviously right-handed defense, but you can just plug that by playing Miro Heiskanen, Harley, or Lindell on the right side to start out the season. they're going to be a great team. The last 3 years, they put up 106, 113, and 108 points. Just a safe bet to win the Central Division. The Minnesota Wild, now at the Kaprizov stuff, as well as the Philip Gustafsson. 5 years, $6.8 million. Very solid deal. It was pending unrestricted free agent. That's all out of the way. Zuccarello being out like 6 to 8 weeks is definitely unfortunate. But when Kaprizov and Ek were healthy last year, this team was a 108-point pace team. Again, it's not a guarantee that Kaprizov stays healthy. He's dealt with a lot of injuries in his career, but last year was the only like significant one. What this is really going to come down to is Liam Ogren and Danil Yurov potentially being effective third liners, because like in Tampa Bay, the bottom six has been a big question mark. The secondary scoring from this team outside of Kaprizov's line has not really been there in recent years. I think Tarasenko is going to bounce back a little bit. And defensively, their defense core is pretty solid. I don't know how their penalty kills so bad every fucking year, but when looking at it, you got Spurgeon, you got Brodin. Those guys have aged very gracefully. Brock Faber hopefully can bounce back after a little bit of a disappointing sophomore season. And Zeev Boyum, he actually might be playing in the AHL. He hasn't looked that good in the preseason, but if he does crack the lineup, he definitely is going to add to that power play. Might only play 17 minutes a night, but yeah, I think the penalty kill will improve. Philip Gustafsson hopefully can just put up a consistent season like he did last year, and maybe Wallstead gets back on track. I'm pretty high on the Minnesota Wild. The Colorado Avalanche, they're going to make the playoffs. They got Nathan McKinnon. They got Cale Makar. I still have some question marks about the depth outside of the top six. Thankfully, they finally have a second-line center in Brock Nelson, and they finally have a consistent start. Well, Blackwood actually hasn't been that consistent in his career, but an improvement in net. He was very good for them. So there's a lot more safety with this team heading into the season. There's still some concerns about their bottom six, about outside of that top pair on defense. But they'll make the playoffs. They'll be fine, barring any serious injury to a Cale Makar or a Nathan McKinnon. The Mammoth, I am obviously very high on. I'm taking their over of 91 points because I just think that this was an 89-point team last year that didn't have that good of injury luck. When looking at guys like Marino and Dursey, you're getting big internal growth, hopefully from Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther. And yeah, I think you add JJ Peterka. They're clearly aggressive. Ryan Smith clearly wants to make the goddamn playoffs. And I think that they put it together. This would only be an 8-point jump for them. And their analytics also were very, very solid. They were 6th in expected goals percentage at 5-on-5. So yeah, they were kind of unlucky last year a little bit and ended up at 89 points. Vejmelka, it's really going to come down to him. Can he give you a 905? If he does, I think you make the playoffs. The Winnipeg Jets, Connor Hellebuyck will get this team into the playoffs, in my opinion. He'll put up his usual 920 in like 55, 60 games. There is big concerns outside of the top line for the Winnipeg Jets. Will Jonathan Toews, will Adam Lowry look after his injury? You're betting on like Gustav Nyquist to have a bounce back season. I think that this team is shaping up to definitely be worse than the last 2 years of the Winnipeg Jets. But when looking at that defense score, once Sandberg gets back, I think it is a little bit underrated. And you got the most consistent regular season goalie of this generation in Connor Hellebuyck. And then the St. Louis Blues, man, if they were in the Pacific Division, I'd probably have them in the playoffs, but they're in the Central Division. It's going to be absolute war. They were a 105-point pace team under Montgomery. I'm fully aware of that. And they had that insane 12-game win streak. And I think Snuggerud's going to have a very good rookie season. I just like the top 5 teams a little bit more. Again, if they make the playoffs, I will not be shocked. I slept on them heading into last year. Not sleeping on them. Cam Fowler, Parayko, insane pair last season. Yeah, I think they're going to be a fun team, but just barely missed the playoffs because last year they did need that 12-game win streak. And I know that they started slow under Bannister, but I have them just barely missing because of divisional seeding. And then we got the Predators. I think they're going to bounce back a decent amount. They were very unlucky relative to their analytics. They could not get a save from even UC Soros. So I think they're going to bounce back, but also like, while they're going to have progression to the mean, is it progression or is it just regression? They're going to be better in terms of what their underlying numbers result in actual results, but also on the flip side of that, they have age regression coming in guys like Stamkos, Marchessault, Roman Josi. So it's like both forces. They're not going to be as bad, but I don't see them as some kind of playoff threat. And the Chicago Blackhawks, they're probably still going to stink, if we're going to be honest. They're going to be a more fun team because they actually have guys outside of Bedard like having full seasons. Frank Nazar full season, Sam Rinzel, Leshinov maybe. So they're going to be a much more entertaining watch. Oliver Moore, but they're still going to be pretty bad. Knight and Soderblom, fun young goalie tandem. Maybe in 2 to 3 years they can be good, but probably not going to be good next season for the most part. And then we're moving on to the Pacific Division. Pacific Division. I got the Vegas Golden Knights. When looking at them, that forward core is so goddamn good. It is so goddamn deep. They're adding Mitch Marner. They only really lost Pietrangelo and Nick Watt to get him. That's a solid move for at least the regular season. Playoffs is a different thing. But yeah, the defense core led by Shea Theodore and Hannafin. I have my question marks about that come playoff time because they're just kind of like two offensive defensemen, but they'll be good in the regular season. They got some good defensive guys as well. And then in net, Aiden Hill, although not the longest track record, can give you 45 to 50 games at around the 906, 908. I think they end up winning the Pacific Division. The Edmonton Oilers, they're going to have their typical like dog shit first 5 to 10 games. People are going to want Chris Knobloch fired. People are going to want Stuart Skinner shot into the sun. Then they're going to absolutely like beast mode 112 pace the rest of the season, point base. But yeah, that's the script for the Edmonton Oilers. I do think this might be the deepest and best team that they've had heading into a regular season, just because you have a full season of Jake Wallman. If one of Ike Howard or Matthew Savoy can really hit the ground running, they really lack that high-end skill within their middle six on the wings. So that's something very intriguing. I may be higher on them come playoff time, but right now in the regular season, I know that they're going to like have just like one horrible month-long stretch of absolute dog shit goaltending that will probably stop them from being 110, 112 point team. So I got them at 105. Next up, who's going to be that third Pacific Division playoff team? Go with the Vancouver Canucks. And again, I have them at a lower point total than the St. Louis Blues, the sixth team in the Central Division. But yeah, I went back and forth on this. I think the Canucks, if everything goes right, it could be a disaster. But even last year, they ended up having 90 points despite getting 23 games of Demko, who sucked, who was dealing with an injury. Quinn Hughes missed 14 games and was battling through injury, like the injury that eventually he had to sit out for another like 15 to 20 games. Pettersson missed 18 games. Phil Pronik missed 21 games. They're getting a full season of Marcus Pettersson. I acknowledge that they also are losing JT Miller, of course, who played around 40 games. But I think that this defense core is really good. I look at Quinn Hughes, legit superstar, top 2 defenseman in the NHL. Phil Pronik's a really good number 2. Marcus Pettersson's an awesome number 3. Tyler Myers is really good when he's not making like $6 million. It's just going to come down to Demko being healthy, Pettersson bouncing back. How many times have I said in this video? It's going to come down to, I feel like I said that 9,000 times. But yeah, this defense core is really good, ranked 6th in expected goals against per 60 last year. Just need Demko and Lankinen to be healthy. And I think that they could be solid. The forward core is kind of underwhelming. But yeah, when you look at how similar to the Boston Bruins, like everything went wrong for this team, but they were still in the mix like the final 2 to 3 weeks. I think that they are going to have a little bit of a bounce back. The LA Kings, they're going from a top 5 defense core, maybe even top 3 defense core in the NHL to just middle of the pack, getting rid of Spence, getting rid of Gavrikov, bringing in Ceci and Dumoulin for the same cap hit this season. Yeah, and that doesn't help, especially when your goaltender has been a little bit volatile in recent years and is 35 years old. And Darcy Kemper had a 921 last year in 50 games. I don't expect that to happen as well. They're still a solid team. And again, if Byfield and Lafreniere and Clark take steps, they'll probably make the playoffs and pass the Vancouver Canucks. But yeah, I'm kind of down on this team. The vibes are bad in LA. Maybe it's just Ken Holland, but I'm lower on them than most. Granted, last year I also did say that they were going to miss the playoffs, I think. They ended up being a 105-point team, so I was wrong once on them last year. We'll see if I'm wrong again. Anaheim Ducks, this is kind of similarly to the Montreal Canadiens, where if you sim the last season 100 times, 80 of those times, they were probably a 70, 71-point team. That goalie tandem just really carried them to 80 points. So I have them taking a jump, but maybe not the jump that you would expect after bringing in Chris Kreider, after bringing in Mikael Granlund, after hopefully getting a big internal growth from guys like Leo Carlsson, Olen Zellweger, Mitnyakov, all of that stuff. But I think, yeah, next season will be that jump potentially into the playoffs. Probably not this season, but still a successful. Their analytics will definitely improve a lot under Joel Quenneville compared to Cronin, and their special teams will. They were like 4th worst in the penalty kill, 1st worst in the power play. I just don't expect that goalie tandem that was like legitimately top 3 in the NHL last season to have that same result. Now that it's just Dostal going to play 55 games and his backups are like Ville Husso and Petr Mrazek, not seeing the same level of success there. And then to finish it out, the Seattle Kraken, you could not in a lab construct a more below average team when looking at it. Best forward, Jared McCann. Best defenseman, Vince Dunn, who I do like a lot. But starting goalie, Joey Decord, who's like a top 15 to 22 guy. They just do everything to below average to bad. I really don't know. Like, maybe Wright and Beniers really break out, but like, even if that happens, I don't see them getting to like 90, 95 points to make the playoffs. For the sake of their franchise, they should get rid of Ron Francis and really commit to a rebuild 4 years into their existence. That'd be a pretty hard sell. Like, in a weird way, I've said this multiple times, but in a weird way, their 2023 season was like the worst thing to happen because it tricked the ownership, the management into thinking that they were only a couple pieces away instead of the fact that they just like had 35 goals scored above expected that season. So I got them at 78 points. Calgary, another team that for the sake of their franchise should stink this year. They're going at it. They're actually injecting some young roster players and they didn't address backup goalies. So maybe that's their plan to absolutely stink it up. But yeah, I think they're going to take a step back. When looking at it, it's not that inspiring of a forward core. Dustin Wolf could elevate them to yet again being in the wild card mix. But hopefully Conroy gets rid of Rasmus Anderson and does not extend that man. Zane Prek should be fun this year. Not sure how big of a role he's going to play, though. But Calgary probably going back to the bottom. And then the San Jose Sharks at 68 points. I'm lower on this team than most. Their over-unders at like 72.5. The defense core is just god-awful. This guy's going to be awesome to watch at like 12:30 a.m. on a given Monday night. But besides the top line and the top power play, there's not much to like about the San Jose Sharks team. And again, this would be a 16-point jump. Like, this would be a good season, assuming their young guys individually also take steps. But yeah, with the defense core that bad of Orlov, Leddy, Klingberg, and the big 2025-2026, it's probably not going to be that good. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about these division predictions? So Capitals in a wild card spot, Panthers in a wild card spot as well. We got the Mammoth and the Jets in the Western Conference wild card spots. And only 3 teams making it from the Pacific Division, and the Pacific Division third place team having less points than the Central Division's 6th best team. Let me know in the comments. I really hope that happens, just so Gary Bettman finally has to admit, like, this shit is so dumb in terms of divisional seeding. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? I'll post my playoff predictions based on that regular season standings predictions, like the overall bracket and who I'm going to have winning the Stanley Cup and all that good stuff. I'll have my season punishments Monday or Tuesday. I have another announcement probably coming out Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, that I'm excited for. And yeah, thank you guys so much for following along. Love you guys so much. I'm jacked up for this fucking season. And I'll be seeing the next one. Peace.